You're listening to Imperfect Heroes, Insights into Parenting, the perfect podcast for imperfect parents looking to find joy in their experience of raising children in an imperfect world. And I'm your host, DJ Stutz. Hey everyone, thank you for choosing to spend the next few minutes with us here at Imperfect Heroes, Insights into Parenting. And you'll see I don't have my normal background up. That is because I have a guest in home. That's only happened a few times in our 168 episodes. You're 169.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So when I have someone here, so this is the office. This is where the magic happens. I know it's very exciting. But we're talking today, this whole month we've been talking about self-discipline and how to encourage that in our own children. But parents need to look at their own self-discipline as well. Like when you're really torqued, you're had enough. We use self-discipline so we don't kill our children. And and that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Before we get started on this great topic, though, I have two things I want to share. Number one is, my book, Roman is Bigger. It got a 5-star review from Reader's Favorite, and that's a big deal, actually. But also, just this week, it went on Kindle.
Really?
Yeah, you can now get a Kindle version of this. So,
nice.
Yeah, just go to Amazon, and of course, I'll have the link in the show notes. I'm going to do that. Make it easy for you. If you want just a Kindle version, that's fine. Or if you want, I've got a hardcover and softcover. And the next one, we're keeping our fingers crossed. We're hoping Roman is the Bigger Brother will be coming out in time for Christmas.
Nice.
It's iffy. We'll see. But we're working with the illustrator right now, and things are going good. The other thing I wanted to share with you is that our podcast has been nominated for Best Podcast in the category of Parenting, Family, and Kids by the Women in Podcasting group.
That's awesome.
I know. So voting ends on October 1st. So it's getting close. Guess what? Again, the link to vote for me is in the show notes. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, mom and dad, have them all vote for Imperfect Heroes, and we would appreciate that. All right, so let's get going. This is Wolfgang Bennion. Now, if you've been listening from the very beginning, you'll know there were several Bennions that were in there on those first 15 episodes because I was just getting started, learning how to line up guests. And so if they're Bennion, they're related to me. This is not an exception. This is my nephew, Wolfgang Bennion, and his dad and sister were on episode 5.
Yep.
And your mom
was episode 10.
Episode 10.
Yeah.
So episode 5 was about raising strong daughters. I love that Sunny, his sister's name is Sunny. And that her senior year, she was homecoming queen. Yes. She also kicked the game-winning field goal at the homecoming game. She was on the varsity football team. And
so that was a big story.
That was a big story. It was so much fun. So much fun. So anyway, and then your mom, who is Dr. Bennion, she's got her doctorate in nursing. And we talked about moving forward in education when you've got little kids. Because she had all 3 of you guys while she was working on all that. So strong, good family. Love this family. Love this family. So much we moved here into the middle of nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
To be close to you guys.
Yeah, you just had your first Idaho winter this past.
We did. It was pretty exciting. Yeah. And I heard it was mild.
Yeah, no, that was
comparatively mild.
That was a really mild winter. They get pretty bad.
So we're excited for that. And so anyway, we are just having a good time. Now, Wolfgang, you're the oldest of 3.
Yes.
And you just graduated from college in psychology?
History.
Oh, yes. Excuse me. History. And then you also went through the ROTC program.
Yep.
And you are a 2nd lieutenant.
Yes.
In the Army. Moving on, you'll be leaving me soon with your baby. I'm so sad about that.
It's a bummer.
I know, but you'll be going to Washington?
Yeah, so I'll be stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington. But first I have a training in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Got it. So you've got all of that going on. And you were telling me it's like a butter bar.
Yeah.
is the insignia for
Yeah.
first lieutenant.
Yeah, the nickname for a second lieutenant is a butter bar.
Or second lieutenant, yeah.
Yeah.
Fun. Now, your brother, Browning, also just graduated in May from West Point.
Yes.
So he is also a second lieutenant?
Yes, he is also a second lieutenant.
And once you get to Washington, you'll be stationed together.
Yep. Hopefully we'll be living in the same town, but we'll still be working in the same
Base.
Same general area. Yeah. Yep.
So cool. And Browning just got married.
Yes.
So lots of fun excitement in your family.
Yeah. No, we're super
and
excited.
you have the most adorable little guy, Leo.
Yep.
Yeah, and he is a year old.
He is 15 months.
15 months. That just goes by way too fast.
Yeah.
Adorable little redhead. Love that kid. He's so much fun.
He's so cute.
You're just starting out, though, on this whole parenting journey. And I know that the family that you grew up in was very structured, self-discipline. And if you didn't self-discipline, someone else would discipline you.
You didn't self-discipline, you get disciplined.
That's right. And so now you're the parent.
Yep.
And you've got this cute little guy. So, and your wife, Bethany. So sweet. Love Bethany.
She's great.
She is great. So you're starting to have, well, hopefully you've had these conversations about what are the important things that you want to teach and pass on to your children.
Yeah.
Leo's just the start, I think. And so one of the things that you might talk about is that whole self-discipline thing. How are you going to teach Leo to be one of those kids that does the right thing when no one is looking?
Well, I think part of it is self-discipline. Like you said, it's self-discipline. It's got to be something you want to do rather than being forced on you. And that's just going to come with finding a goal you have, whether it's like for me when I was on the wrestling or football team in high school or even in the Army, it's you have this goal in mind that you want to achieve, and it's how badly do you want that goal? Are you going to stick to the things that you need to do to achieve that? Whether it's playing varsity football or getting a temple marriage, it's all up to you to decide what you want to do and how you're going to get there.
Yeah. And so when we start young, honestly, you've started teaching him self-discipline already in that when he's around another child or a pet or whatever, and you're teaching him soft touch, he's going to learn on his own eventually.
Yeah.
You don't need daddy or mommy there to put my hand on the dog or whatever and be gentle. So you've already started teaching self-discipline.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things then that you see coming down the road, maybe in the next year or so, and then we can talk about maybe as he gets older?
Yeah. So some of the things I'm seeing for Leo in the next year is, I'm going to be gone for 3.5 months doing that training, and that's going to be really hard. Not just for me, but for his mom and for him, like not having dad there. That's one of the ways that I teach him is, it's you interact differently at different times in different situations, but then also a lot of times you interact differently with mom and dad. We have that rule. You're saying teaching him not to hit. It's you do not hit mom ever under any circumstance. Right. If you're roughhousing with dad or you're playing rough, and not to say that you can't roughhouse with mom, you absolutely can. But I found Leo tends to want to, when he wants to roughhouse, he gravitates more towards me than to my wife. And if you're roughhousing, then it is okay to be a little bit rougher. But every person in every situation is going to be different, and to not have me be there, I think that's going to be kind of harder for him to learn that.
Yeah, that is true. And I think every family is different. The family your dad and I grew up in, the roughhousing came from mom.
Yeah.
Have you met Grandy?
Oh, yeah.
And my dad was more reserve and college professor, brainiac, electrochemical engineering, known all over the world for his work. Every family, one parent will have something and another parent will have another thing that they bring to the table. So how are some of the things then that you are going to teach him about maybe treating girls, behaving in class, or just even picking up your toys and keeping things clean?
Part of it is treating girls the big question is, would you treat your mother this way? Because growing up, the whole time I've heard is, especially my family and parents teaching my sisters, you want to see how a young man is going to treat you as a girlfriend or as a spouse. Look at how he treats his mother. Look how he treats his sister and the women in his life. And so the biggest thing is, would you be okay, or would your mom be okay if you did this to her? Granted, there's certain situations it's going to be a little bit different with your girlfriend than with your mom. You're not.
Hopefully.
But it's Are you going to open the door for your mom? Are you going to...
She's got a big load of groceries or something.
Exactly.
Are you going to get up off your butt and go help her?
Exactly. Like, are you going to take that initiative to treat the young women in your life how they need to be treated? I think that's going to start with how you're going to treat your mom or your sisters.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that I've noticed watching you guys grow up and being around, that anytime I've like carrying a bunch of stuff, or I've never had to ask you or Browning for help. You notice and bam, you get up and go without even being asked. So how did that come about?
Well, it's always going to start rough when you're younger, because when you're a little kid, you don't understand that you have a harder time understanding what things are right and wrong, especially if it's not a hard line right or wrong. It's very easy to say, yeah, don't hit. But when you say it's wrong to not help mom with the groceries, I mean, it's not the same scale of like, hey.
Right.
And so it's going to be a lot harder. You're going to have to maybe sometimes make them come help when they don't want to. You know, I mean, I remember when I was a little kid, mom would come home with groceries and dad's like, hey, put it down, whatever you're doing, go help mom. You can either go help her willingly and whatever you're doing will still be there. You can keep doing that as soon as you're done. Or I can make you go help mom, and then whatever you're doing is going to be gone.
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, it's kind of rough that way, but then as you start progressing with that, it starts to be less of a reward punishment and more of that's just what's done. That's what you do. You know, it's not just with you or with Bethany or with my mom. Like, you see anyone who needs help, that's just what you do. Like, that's who you want to be.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. And I want to make the point too that your mom could kick your butt. Yeah. So she's a 2-time world champion.
CrossFit world champion, yep.
CrossFit world champion. Just recently, they went and were in a jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, jiu-jitsu tournament.
And she came in first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it doesn't mean that someone has to be weak or needy, but just that I have an opportunity here.
Exactly. Like, you shouldn't help someone just because you see them as being weaker or lesser than you. You should just help them because that's what you're supposed to do, because they need help.
Right.
Whether it's your girlfriend if you're on a date, or whether it's your mom, or whether you see some random guy, if he drops groceries or whatever, you run to help him. You know?
Right. And I've seen you guys do that often. And so then too, you talked about sports, and so you had football and wrestling.
Yes.
I know Sunny, well, she had a little bit of football, but soccer and softball. Where do you think that came in, and what role did your parents have? Because I see some kids on sports team and they're, I didn't get to play or whatever. Yeah. And I don't see your parents like, yeah, you better get better.
Yeah.
If you want to play, go home and practice. I'll help you.
Yeah.
But we're not going to get mad at the coach because he didn't put you in.
Yeah. And I think, especially with football, there's a little bit more explaining to do with that. Because for wrestling, if you're not wrestling, you're not getting matches, and you're not varsity. And it's simple. You beat the guy who's in front of you. Like, you have wrestle-offs every week. And if you can beat the guy who's better than you, then you get his spot.
Right.
So for wrestling, it's very simple. If you want more time in matches and you want more attention during those matches, then be the best one there. You know, and that's something that me and Brown, I mean, whether it's natural talent, working hard, our parents always incentivized us to work as hard as we can. I mean, I wrestled varsity all 4 years in high school. My brother, I believe he did as well.
Yeah, I think he did.
I mean, we weren't always the best wrestlers in the room. I mean, towards our senior years, like my brother's 2 years younger than me, but during my senior year, and I think his eventually did, we were the best wrestlers in the room. And the only people who could beat us were either the coaches or people who were significantly bigger than we were. My buddy Kenny was the only person in that room who could beat me, and that's because he had 100 pounds on me.
Oh, wow.
You know, but then for football, it's the same thing. Like, if you're not happy with the time you're getting in the game, look at how you're practicing. It's hard. And I mean, I know I get a lot of different comments from people because my dad was one of the coaches.
Right. Defensive coordinator.
Yeah, he was the D coordinator.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of people who are quick to say, you were only a starter on varsity because your dad played.
Look at your stats.
Yeah, like, look at my stats. Look at how hard I was working in practice. Like, I was all-state O-line my senior year, and I was probably one of the smallest O-linemen in the state. Like, it's one of those things, like, if you're not happy with where you are in life, whether it's with sports, jobs, then ask yourself, what are you doing to improve that situation? Like my dad with football, his go-to reaction whenever you have a parent who's complaining about their kid not getting enough time is to say, okay, come watch practice. Come watch come watch his work ethic in practice, and then we'll talk. And it's just something that goes along with whether it's, I mean, I always will by nature defer to football and wrestling because that's what I'm familiar with. But even with Sonny, with soccer and with softball, I mean, Sunny was first team, was like player of the year. Every year she was played soccer. She's one of the best soccer players I've ever met. And
and she's playing college ball now.
Yep, she's got a scholarship playing college soccer. And so it's one of those things like if you're not happy with where you are, then put in the work to get better. I remember Sunny, if you're listening to this, don't take this the wrong way. I mean, Sunny wasn't always great at soccer. When she was first learning, like no one's great when you first start out. But then I think there are very few people who I've ever known who have put in the work that Sunny has put in to get to where she is. I mean, you look at her like, yeah, she is tall. She's extremely athletic. She's the most athletic one in the family. And people look at her and like, oh, that's just 100% just raw talent. Well, I mean, that's easy to say when you weren't there watching the work that was put in. I mean, I don't think anyone's ever worked as hard as my sister has to get the goals that she wants.
Right. And I think you bring up such a good point is that, especially I think even more so in today's society than when my kids were younger or I was younger, if it isn't easy, I'm giving up. You see that a lot. I see that a lot in school, in academics, I see that in relationships with adults. As soon as it gets hard, oh yeah, it's hard. Divorce, whatever, drop it.
Yeah.
And it just rips apart the lives of your kid. And, well, I have to be happy. Okay, well, let's look at the bigger picture. And I think that's part of teaching self-discipline is helping kids look at the bigger picture instead of yelling at them. It's not all about you.
Yeah.
But saying, when you did this, this was the result.
Yeah.
So-and-so got hurt. This friend is crying because their heart is broken because you were cruel. Or you got in trouble at school because you were impulsive and didn't manage your emotions and got in trouble in the classroom or on the playground or whatever. And now I have to come in.
When I was growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's a good thing too, is to talk about that. So when you did get in trouble like that at school, I know once in a while I got in trouble at school too. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if my mom got a phone call, I was in worse trouble when I got home. So, and I'm wondering, and knowing Danny, that's your dad, the way that I know him, I imagine that was pretty much the same.
Yeah. For your first question about people quitting because it's too hard, it's some advice that my mom has given me. And I think it's something I've lived by is don't let the difficulty of the path deter you from achieving the goals that you want to in the future. What do you want to achieve? Whether it's like my mom getting a doctorate when she's raising 3 little hellion kids.
Well, and then her hellion husband.
Yeah. Yeah. Or whether it's my brother working his butt off to get accepted into West Point.
Right.
Going through basic training when I enlisted right out of high school. You look at this goal, how bad do you want it? It's like, okay, well, this is the path ahead of you. Yeah, it's hard. It's going to suck, but it's going to be worth it in the end. With being in trouble in school, I mean, it seems like it was in elementary school, I think it was once or twice. But then in junior high, it seems like every day or every other day, I was getting called down to the principal's office, the assistant principal's office, because I got in a fight with usually the same kid. But it's one of those things like, and I think it comes as you get older, especially whether it's men or women, male or female. You tend to be a lot more hot-headed and have a harder time controlling your emotions as a kid. And I remember every time my dad would have to come get me, depending on how bad it was, whether I got a full-on brawl or whether I got in an argument with someone. It's like, hey, well, you messed up. He was never one of those parents who was going to deny it. You definitely screwed up.
Oh, it's the other kid's fault.
Yeah.
He's bullying or she's bullying, right?
Yeah. And it was one of the things Wolf hit him. Yep, that's you hit him. Like that's no one's fault but your own. His face didn't just trip into your fist. It was 100% your fault. So now you have to deal with the punishment. And usually whether that punishment was getting suspended, I think that happened once, or whether it was just getting yelled at by my dad when we got home. You need to learn to control your emotions because regardless of whether you started the fight or not, you're still going to get in trouble for that fight. Whereas if you would have just controlled yourself and maintained control of your emotions and just walked away, nothing would have happened.
Right. And I like that you and your dad were talking about where the alternatives were. That would have made it decelerate or just walking away, giving someone not that time. So that I think is really important. So my listeners who've listened for me long, any of the families I coach They know one of the big things that I really push to help families come together with whatever the topic is, honestly, including self-discipline, is weekly family meetings. And so giving kids, especially when they're little, a chance to practice, to role play. So, I got in this situation. But you do it when tempers are calm. When you're super riled up, you're not learning anything.
Yeah. No.
You're just angry. And so you have to get it when it's calm, and if you do it at a different time and say, hey, let's practice this. So, that one kid that you were always in trouble with, right? Always going after. And so maybe your dad could role play, or your mom even, that kid. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
What are you going to do now? And then you're thinking about it, and you can have a lot of fun with it. You can be goofy with it. But when kids have a chance to, it's like with sports, right? You get better when you're practicing.
Yeah, when you practice. Anything you do, whether it's sports or controlling your emotions, whether it's reading, math, and sports, very few things are just going to come naturally. It's all going to take work. There are people out there who are very successful who are just born with the natural ability, but the people who are born with that ability never had to do anything with it, whereas the people who've had to work for it and put in the effort, you're going to see a big difference in, one, appreciation for that ability, and two, level of skill.
Yeah.
Because raw talent can only get you so far.
Right.
But whereas if you're willing to put in that work and make those hard decisions and sacrifice and put in the practice, the sky's the limit.
Yeah. Well, and two, there's that saying that, there's a couple of them. So as educators, and I remember my dad even talking about that. He took great pride in weeding out the unworthy of electrochemical engineering. And like, if you can say it, I think I'm really impressed with you. But he would say how there were kids who came in that everything came easy to them in high school. They didn't even have to really do homework.
Yeah.
They could just take a test. They knew it. It all came to them. And then they get to college. They don't have the work ethic that they needed. And all of a sudden now, it's hard. Or wait, I've always gotten A's. It's your fault that I'm not getting the A. And it's like, no. These are the standards. This is it. You're either willing to put the effort in. But so oftentimes, and this comes to the next saying, is that A students wind up working for C students. Because a lot of times A students have everything coming to them so easily. And there are kids who really do work their butt off.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's that natural thing. But the C students are the ones that are having to hustle and to figure around things. And too, that I guess there's a thing, sorry parents, that sometimes A students don't have the social skills that a C student has.
Yeah.
So let's look at the whole child. Let's not get all nuts. My daughter, Rocky, and her son, Sylvan. And I remember at the end of the year, I said, so how did Sylvan do with school? And she goes, he is perfectly average, and I love it, right?
Yep.
And he works hard. He's got his high things. He's got the things he needs to work on. But parents sometimes get so caught up in, my child is straight A's. My child is the captain of the team, or whatever it is. And it's like, no, my child's working his butt off and he got a B-, but I will value that B- more than the A that came so easy.
Yeah.
Because that's showing that self-discipline of, I got to work harder. I got to get this done. I've got to make it go. And so you really want to help your kids with that. And so be more interested in the process rather than the result.
Yeah. So, I agree. There are people, and a lot of them, who just get A's. Never have to work for it.
I was always jealous of them.
Me too. Especially, my thing is always jealous about is people in math who always understood that and never had to work for it. Granted, you're going to have to work with any kind of math, whether it's calculus or rocket surgery.
Surgery.
Yeah. I've never been good at math, and to my detriment, I've never really been interested or cared enough to put in the work.
Right.
And so I see people who have put in the work. You can definitely tell people who have put in the work and have gotten good versus someone who's like, I'm just naturally good at math, And I'll take my little brother, for example. He might be my little brother, but he is one of the people who I look up to most in this life, just because I see how hard he's worked. I'm going to pick on him for a little bit, but we would always play a game because he always had the hardest time spelling. And so we always play these games like, we tell him a word like, hey, can you spell this word? Generally, they tended to be pretty simple words. But then Brown flips that switch and says he wants to go to West Point. He's like, well, you're going to have to write a lot of essays. And so he's talked to English teachers in high school. He's talked to my mom, who's written more essays than I can count, and has even helped me with my essays in writing those 30-page college papers. And he's put in that work, and now he's gotten to be really good at writing. And the same thing with math. He wasn't as bad as I was in math, but I mean, to get a degree in mechanical engineering from West Point, which I'll argue is Harvard and Yale eat your heart out, is the most challenging college in America. He wasn't all A's, but he definitely got his degree in mechanical engineering, and that's pretty much entirely math. Like that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know, and you get people who, I know several people from high school, college, whatever, who were just naturally good at math, never had to put in the work. But then as soon as you get something they don't understand or can't wrap their head around, it's like a roadblock. And they never had to work for it before, so they just can't fathom the idea of, wait, this doesn't make sense to me. But if you get people like my brother who will put in the work and put in those late hours of going to tutors, talking to your professors, and that's where you're going to get the real benefit.
Well, and I can tell you as a teacher that when I would try to help kids, but I knew they were going to be successful when they would come to me and say, even in kindergarten, can you help me with this? Like, I want to know.
Yeah.
And you can see these traits developing even that young. And of course, there's plenty of time to switch it around and to help your kid and turn them around. But when you see a child that comes in, even in kindergarten, and they have that attitude of, I want to learn something new, or they get excited when they figured something out, those light bulb moments. That's why every teacher is a teacher.
Yep.
It's those light bulb moments. So some kids, I think, like with everything, some kids are natural artists.
Yeah.
Some kids are natural athletes. Some kids are natural mathematicians.
Yeah.
But every child has something, and every adult, let's be honest, that they are going to need to put effort in and to work on to get better. So if you had a child that is academically gifted and they are all high, we need to be sure that we're finding something that we can insert in their life
that they need to work for.
That's going to be hard for them. When I was teaching on the top of my classroom, I had these words, the little laminate words that you can stick on your walls. And it was, we are kind, we are smart, and we do hard things. When my grandson was here this summer, and he would say, this is hard. That's perfect.
Yep.
Because we do hard things.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can start seeing his attitude changing.
Yeah, and I mean, the same thing goes for Leo. You see him struggle with things. And I think this goes with a lot of parents. You see your kids struggle learning to do something or struggling to figure something out, and you want your first reaction to be, oh, let me show you. Let me do this for you. And I'm just as guilty of that. It's
natural.
Yeah, it's not. I see Leo struggling with this. I'm like, oh, I can fix this. Let me take care of that. And credit to my wife. She's the one who has been like, no, he needs to figure this out for himself. Because if you do this for him, you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You teach him how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Is that thing like, oh, if you just give this to him or you do this for him, it's going to be the same problem over and over again. But you let Leo or let your child figure this out, and then the next time they go at it, they're going to be better at it.
Yeah.
As a parent with Leo, few things make my day or brighten my soul up as much as watching Leo get that moment where it clicks or he figures something out, and he immediately just turns to me and his mom with the biggest smile on his face. It makes my day. I love seeing when that happens.
And that opportunity would be missed if you were always jumping in and fixing it for him and doing things for him.
Exactly.
Even when kids are arguing, I kind of want to step back and well, let's see where this goes. Let them have that opportunity to try and work it out. And, brothers and sisters will punch each other.
Yeah.
Best friends, especially if they're boys, will punch each other.
Yep.
So, all right, well, what are you going to do with that?
I think some of the nastiest fights I've ever gotten have been with Bear, and he's still one of my
nickname for Brownie, by the way.
Sorry, I call
as
Brownie
Brown
Bear.
Bear. Yeah. So he's Bear to much of the family.
Yeah. No, so I forgot that.
That's okay.
People don't know who Bear
But they
is.
all know Bear. Come on.
Yeah. No. So Brownie, or I call him Bear. Some of the gnarliest balls to the wall fights have been with Brown. Blood has been shed. Fights have happened. Mom has had to intervene. But just because siblings fight or have disagreements, that doesn't mean that their relationship is ruined. They hate each other. I mean, I'm not sure if it's faded or not, but I still have a scar right here on my nose. If you can see, I'm not sure if it's...
I just can, yeah.
Yeah, that was from Brown. We got into a fight, and that fight got nasty fast and busted my nose open. And that's one of my memories I have of, yeah, this isn't just little kid Brown anymore. Like if I'm going to fight, it's a fight.
Oh, he's growing up.
Yeah. I mean, we still get in arguments, but I'd be a liar if I said that Bear isn't my best friend in the whole world right now. I mean, other than my wife, like I
can
talk to him
see
about
it
everything.
when you guys are together. You can really see it.
Yeah, like there's nothing I wouldn't do for him, despite all the fights and all all the disagreements we've gotten in and still get in. There's nothing we wouldn't do for each other.
Yeah. And so there's another piece to self-discipline there in understanding that things happen, but it's not going to change the love that I have for this person, whether it's a spouse, a child, a sibling, a friend.
Yeah, and with that self-discipline, it's not just with a spouse or a friend, like with your job. I just finished up 3 years at Standard Plumbing Supply, and my boss, Duke, if you ever visit Standard Plumbing in Rexburg, go talk to Duke. He knows his stuff if you have a plumbing problem, but you work for someone for 3 years, yeah, you're going to have disagreements. In certain situations, yeah, voices are going to be raised, you're going to have disagreements. But at the end of the day, that relationship is still there. I mean, if you're a good employee, hopefully, if you have a good boss, he'll recognize, yeah, we had a disagreement, we got upset, but he's still a good employee. Well, that doesn't change who he is. And as an employee, it's your job, like, realize, like, yeah, we had a disagreement, but that's still my boss. That's still the guy who keeps me having a job. And despite all our disagreements, I'll say Duke is one of the best people I have ever worked for. I've never had a boss who's willing to take care of his employees as Duke. Like he'll bend over backwards to make things happen. But part of that is remembering, having that discipline of just because you have a disagreement doesn't mean that your relationship is ruined. I've seen several people come through that store who I've worked with who they weren't bad people. Just because you have a disagreement doesn't make you a bad person. But they'd get in a disagreement with Duke or with another employee and just couldn't let it go.
Yeah.
And then whether that ends up with them quitting or getting fired, like it's not being able to see beyond your own emotions and to realize just because you have a disagreement doesn't mean your relationship is ruined.
Yeah.
To be able to have that disagreement and then let the dust settle and go back to like, okay, here we go. We're still friends. We're still coworkers. We got to keep working. Life moves on.
That's such a huge part of self-discipline that we really don't teach or we don't really talk about it, although we see it all the time. I mean, we're in the middle of this big election, and depending on if you're on one side, you're a bad person, or you're an idiot, or you're stupid, or you're whatever. And no, they just have a different point of view. Maybe they don't have the same information that you have.
Yeah.
But that's a fine time to be able to say, yeah, well, I'll show you how I got to where I am. I want to hear how you got to where you are. I may not I probably won't change my opinion, but at least I understand where you're coming from.
Exactly. Like just because you have differences doesn't mean that you can't be friends.
Exactly.
Like, just because you disagree with someone on a few aspects doesn't mean you have to hate them as a person. And just because you agree with someone on certain aspects doesn't mean you're going to blindly follow them anywhere.
Exactly.
Like with my mother-in-law, like it's not like we have different political opinions. We have things that we see differently about, and we talk about it all the time. But we've never gotten in each other's faces. We've never been disrespectful. In fact, she's one of the few people who are like, yeah, I'll talk politics with you. Like we believe the same thing. But at the end of the day, she's awesome. Like despite our disagreements on certain things, I hit the in-law jackpot. I love her to death, and before and after our disagreements, not disagreements, but our discourses discussing.
Discourses, yes.
Like I still love her. Like she's taking great care of me and my wife. Having those disagreements or having different views doesn't mean that you're a bad person or the other, or the person who believes differently from you is a bad person. You're allowed to have different viewpoints, and still be friends with people.
Exactly. A great lesson to help our society as a whole move forward and become better.
Yep.
All right. Well, Wolf, we're about done. Isn't that crazy?
That's nuts.
It goes fast.
It's crazy how quick time flies when you're having fun.
And I'm always fun.
Oh, yeah. It's always fun coming to hang out with you.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's always fun when you come. I love it. I'm going to miss you when you're...
I'm gonna miss you too, for sure.
Moved. I know. I'm going to miss your son more, though, I think.
Oh, yeah. No, my parents are the same way. Like, yeah, I'm going to miss you, but how dare you take Leo?
Yeah. You're moving? Oh, well... Leo's gonna miss you.
Yep. Yeah, it's something that they're really bummed about is missing out with Leo.
I know. And I've been through it. I mean, all my kids have spread out, and their jobs and education and marriage and whatever has taken them to different parts of the country, and God bless them, and I want them the best, and I'll go see as much as I can, but it's their life. Yeah, that's it. Anyway, okay, so before we end, I always ask my guests the same question. Mm-hmm. And you ought to go back and listen to what your mom and dad said. That would be interesting. No, there's no perfect parents, mm-hmm. but some parents are more successful than others. Mm-hmm. How would you consider a successful parent?
I think it's definitely one of those questions that it's like asking someone in the military, what's your favorite branch? Is they're going to be biased towards their branch? People ask me, like, oh, do you like the Army? Like, or what's your favorite branch? I'm like, oh, the Army. That's what I'm in. So when people ask what do you think a successful parent is, my first thought goes immediately towards my mom and my dad. No parent is perfect, and my parents will be the first ones to admit they're not perfect, and there are things they look back on and wish they'd done differently. But looking back, I think the way my parents raised me, I think that's what makes a successful parent, whether it's with my dad teaching me that work ethic and having me in a weight room since I could walk. I've grown up in a weight room with athletics or watching my mom achieve those goals. Because there was definitely a significant overlap between when she was working towards CrossFit and studying for a PhD, and she was doing those two things, which in and of themselves are extremely hard, and then taking care of me, my brother, and my sister.
And working as a nurse.
Exactly. I'm working those night shifts as a nurse. So seeing the work ethic that I've been taught from both my parents, and then just having that relationship with them. I mean, yeah, you're going to get in trouble with your parents, but I've never really felt like, no matter what I've done, and I've done some crazy things, but I've never really felt like I've ever ruined my relationship with my parents. Like, it's no matter what, no matter how much defecation hits the oscillator to avoid saying certain things, you can always come back to your parents and they'll always be there for you. And I think above all, I think that's what's going to make a successful parent, is knowing that regardless of what your parenting style is or how your kid behaves, making sure it's instilled in them that no matter what, you love them and they're always welcome under your roof. And I think that's the biggest thing a parent can do. Like I said, we just moved out of our apartment. We're living with my parents for a little bit until I have to go to my training. They're just super happy to have us there. We've never thought for a second that they don't want us there. I mean, no matter what you do, make sure your kids understand that there's nothing they can do that will decrease the love you have for them.
Yeah, awesome. Good advice, Mr. Wolfgang Bennion.
Thank you.
Yep, so fun. All right, well, thank you so much for spending. We've been talking about wanting to do this, and then you're getting ready to leave. I'm like, we got to do this.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a while.
Yeah. So this is a lot of fun, and I love the perspective of the brand new dad and just getting started, and that's also cool. So thank you very much for coming in and
it was my pleasure.
Spending time with your old Aunt DJ.
No problem.
Oh. Love you, buddy.
Love you, Deej.
Thanks. So, everyone, next week we'll continue our conversation on self-discipline. But until then, let's find joy in parenting. See ya. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of today's episode of Imperfect Heroes. Parenting is truly one of the most rewarding journeys we can take. But let's face it, it can be incredibly challenging, and sometimes we make it harder on ourselves than it needs to be. The good news is that with a little bit of work up front, there are practical steps you can take to bring more peace and joy into your family life. I am passionate to share these strategies and insights with you. If you're ready to step on the path to joyful, effective parenting, I invite you to schedule a family checkup. Just click on the calendar link in the show notes below, schedule a time that works perfectly for you, and let's work together to create a more harmonious and happy environment. And remember, every small step that you take today makes a big difference. So thank you again for joining us, and until next time, let's find joy in parenting.